No kidding.
Did everybody get a raffle ticket? We got a few things that we'll raffle off.
Same. I don't have a personal card. You know, I'll have to get you back. I got one over there.
I switched the screens last week.
I know a lot. I'll tell you all about it.
Yeah, I'm interested.
$25.
Catch up right
Absolutely.
Oh, excuse
No,
me,
you
sorry.
get one for showing up today. I should do that. You do it by that one. I'm like, all right, see the big guy in the back. If you don't have one, except for Jeremy.
Yeah, we used to be in logistics. Yeah.
Now I just have to do it for the end of the night.
I used to work.
For you?
It was great.
I'll do it before you chat, okay? All right, welcome. Happy February. Who's excited that it's not snowing? Who would rather have snow? Anyone want snow here? Like 2 people. Good. I love snow until I started to get rental properties. And then when you see you have like that 2 inches and they got to go plow everything and you get the bill, now I hate snow. So, welcome. This is Invest NWI. We appreciate you coming tonight. And my clicker doesn't want to work yet. There we go. This is a premier investment group here in Northwest Indiana. We started this about 3.5 years ago. And the whole objective of the group is to bring together investors of all different levels. So we have people that have never done a deal, just starting about it, to people that have done dozens of deals over a long period of time. But the whole idea is to provide an environment where, one, we can provide relevant real estate education, good place to network and grow the number of people that you know. A couple of benefits about being in part of this monthly group is just, the biggest one is just your ability to network with other people, meet contractors, meet property managers, real estate agents, attorneys, grow your network, learn from other people's mistakes. And then more importantly, a lot of people in the last year or 2 have gotten deals done. Just by raise a hand, who's bought a house or sold a house or done some sort of deal with someone in the group? That's probably about 25-30% of the group. So, and the biggest thing is just no sales BS. I remember going to a group in Illinois a couple of years ago, and the topic was great. At least the idea of the topic was great, but the whole time it was a sales pitch. And I left, and it was on probates, and I left, and like, the guy never talked about probates. You had to pay his program of $9.95, and then you would have got 6 CDs and a booklet. I'm like, I don't even have anything that plays CDs anymore, so we don't do any sales pitching. Disclaimer, the material and content presented today is for educational purposes only. It's not legal advice. Any of the content presented is a recollection of the speaker's personal experiences, and you should definitely consult with your own professionals prior to engaging in any of the activities presented. Also, our vendors that you saw rotating on the previous slide, those are all paid vendors. We do vet them to a certain extent. Some of them we've used, a lot of them we've used, some of them we haven't used yet. But just like anybody that someone's going to recommend to you, whether it's here tonight or through the Facebook page, make sure you do your own due diligence on those folks. Someone was mentioning last month they had someone recommended through the Facebook page and didn't have a good experience with them. I'm like, there's so many posts in that group that I don't have the ability to monitor everybody who's suggested. So just do your due diligence with everybody. Whose 2020 is off to a good start? Who did something? Let me get a mic. Tom, you have a mic? Tom has a mic.
I've wholesaled 2 properties in Illinois so far this year.
There you go. Who else has done something in the first 6 weeks of the year?
I closed a 4-unit property in Hammond that's found through the group.
Where was that one?
It's sort of by the MLK Park. Okay. Maybe talk about it.
Who else did something?
We purchased our first home in Hammond.
I got it.
I sold the first house that I ever bought, and the tenant would move out after 10 years. And then 2 days later, I bought a flip.
Anyone else? Awesome. We only have about 45 weeks left this year, so. If you did a property, and I sent it out in the email and then the text, I think 2 weeks ago, we don't have it tonight, but usually we have a speaker come in. I call it success story, and it's a 10-minute spot, talk about the flip or the rental rehab, and here's the expectations when I bought it and what we thought would happen, and then here's reality, because on the TV shows, they don't always have reality. It always makes flipping look fun. I've done a few flips and none of them go as planned. There's always unknown expenses and stuff that sneaks up. So, talk a little bit about the Facebook group. It's NWI Investor Group. Great Facebook group to be part of. Lots of people ask questions and they're looking for contractors. Someone had a rental question there. Hey, this happened. How would you guys deal with this? So, just another place to stay interactive between the different meetings. Find people that you need help on some of your projects. We don't do any sales in that group, so if you have a house that you're looking to sell, whether it's an investment house or something you just flipped, that's not the group to list it in. And the reason is because there's probably 400 other Facebook groups that you can list houses in, and I don't want to take away the good content in that page by having a bunch of houses in that. But then we also post about upcoming events and other stuff going on. Membership, it's $120 if you're an individual. If you're a couple, it is $160. That's good for the whole year. If you don't want to be a member, you can just pay $20 when you come back. Some of the benefits to being a member is we're part of the Think Realty program, so we get that monthly magazine. We had to subscribe to that and pay them an annual fee. Tons of good content in that magazine. If you can't make the group, there's a private Facebook group different than the one that we mentioned where you can watch it live. If you can't make it, then all of these are recorded. We have most of our meetings going back to the beginning of 2017, so you can go back through, and if there's a topic that interests you, you can watch that. So you can catch one of the folks at the tables after the meeting if that's something that appeals to you. I showed this last month, and I got a few people that replied, but here are some of the future topics that we would like to have presented this year. If you know anybody that would be a good fit to talk about one of those topics, have them reach out to me, and I'll connect with them and go over some of the specifics. If there's a topic there that you think would make an exciting presentation, or if there's not a topic there, but you think you have one that would make an exciting presentation, let me know, and I'll talk to that person. I have the next 2 months planned out, but after April, the whole year is wide open, so we have lots of room to fill in for that. So awesome. I'm excited to have Teresa come up and chat. Actually, let me do the raffle. Tom, can you go see if there's any more raffles? I have 3 tonight, 3 items. There you go. I gave one there. What? Yeah. All right, so first item I'm going to raffle off is some stain and soil remover for carpet. I have 4 kids, that stuff comes in handy. And this is from FCA Flooring Specialist. Christine, you want to raise your hand? She became our flooring vendor about a month ago. They're in Maryville, all sorts of flooring stuff. She has donated 2 tickets to the Home and Remodeling Expo in Porter County, and that is in about a month. So I will grab this one. Last 4 are 7039. 7039. Perfect. All right, this is for one of our t-shirts here, 7044. There you go. And then this last one is a book called The Ultimate Self-Directed IRA Book. I figured it'd be a good book since that's what we're talking about tonight. Oh, we'll get it in last minute. I'll shake it up and make it fair for that last one that just got in. 7018. I'll discuss it. 7018 all the way in the back. Tom, you wanna? I'll do it and I'll hurt someone. I have a better arm than that Mitch guy. I heard the Bears were gonna get Tom Brady. Who would be excited about that? All right, who has a self-directed IRA in here? About 10 or 12 people. If you don't have one, you're missing out. But I'm not going to steal Teresa's thunder. I'll let her talk about all the benefits to having one. And if you still have questions after that, and you want to talk to someone that raised their hand about people that actually have one and what they're doing, definitely catch those people after. I'll turn off.
Hi, everybody. I'm really surprised that this many people came out tonight because of the weather, so thank you. I'm going to try and make this as interesting as possible, but it is concerning Internal Revenue Code and regulations, so I can only do so much. My name is Teresa. I'm with Midland 1031 and IRA. My specialty with the company is facilitating tax-deferred exchanges, as well as helping clients that want to buy and sell real estate using retirement funds. So tonight we're going to talk about self-directed IRAs only, no 1031 exchange talk. If you have questions, throw them out there, because chances are someone else is going to have the same question and might be too shy to ask. If it's something that we're going to cover somewhere along the lines during the presentation, I may just say hold that thought, because we're going to get to it shortly. If I don't know the answer, I'll tell you I don't know, but I'll find out for you, and I'll get you the answer. Is that fair? Okay. Are you excited?
Yeah.
Come on. Did everybody have a nice Valentine's Day? Yeah. How many went out for Valentine's Day, just out of curiosity? Yeah, but I stayed in. I was asleep by 9. That's pretty sad. Okay, just a little bit about us. We are a self-directed IRA administrator, and we are a qualified intermediary for tax-deferred exchanges. We also offer a few other services, but these are the two main ones that we have. We have an office in Chicago. Our corporate headquarters are in Fort Myers, Florida, and all of our trust services are handled out of Sioux Falls. So we are technically a trust company as of 2017. So Midland Trust Company is the custodian of the IRA accounts that we administer. Little public service announcement. We don't offer any sort of tax or legal advice. It's up to you to do your due diligence, as Adrian said earlier. With anything in this presentation, it is strictly for educational purposes. But hopefully you'll leave here with a little nugget of information that you didn't know beforehand. And for those of you that are familiar with self-directed IRAs, hopefully what I'm going to say sounds familiar and isn't totally off the wall. If it does sound off the wall, please raise your hand and just let me know. So what is a self-directed IRA? To clarify, it is not a special type of IRA. It just requires a special type of administrator. So any account that you currently have with, say, Schwab, Fidelity, all of your more traditional IRA administrators, that type of account is exactly the same type of account that you would set up with Midland IRA or any other self-directed IRA administrator. So that's really the key, is it's not a separate or special type of account. It is more having the administrator that's going to allow you to hold alternative assets in the account, such as real estate, notes, private placements. We're going to go through a list of what you could technically do within a self-directed IRA. So typically, the reason why you don't maybe hear too much, the reason why you don't hear too much about self-directed IRAs is 99% of the custodians out there have their own investments and products that they sell. So naturally, they're going to promote those to you, right? They're not going to promote something that they don't. So now that everyone's awake, am I start singing to you guys. So he was like, you know what, let's just make sure that everyone can hear her. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Cool, okay. All right, so just in a nutshell, the reason why you don't typically see the word self-directed IRA tossed around too much is because most IRA custodians don't allow you to hold alternative assets in the account. So they have their stocks, bonds, mutual funds that they offer to you, but they don't allow you to hold anything outside of what they're offering. So enter the self-directed IRA administrator. The key difference is the self-directed IRA administrator does not have any products or services that they're selling. What they're giving you is the opportunity to invest in what you know best. For example, real estate. So if real estate is what you're currently doing, that's your investment of choice. A self-directed IRA allows you to take retirement funds and put those funds into a piece of property. You guys with me so far? Okay. So any type of retirement plan can be self-directed. That was the point that I was trying to get to. Was you're not trying to set up a special account, you're simply setting up an account with a self-directed IRA administrator and opening the floodgates as to what you could potentially invest in with those retirement funds. So these are just types of accounts that you could self-direct if you wanted to. Let me go back to the previous slide because, I had an illustration here about you transferring from your existing plan to a self-directed IRA. Typically with a 403B or a 401K or a 457 plan, if you're currently with your employer, the chances of you being able to take those funds and move them to a self-directed IRA are slim to none. My employer, because he is an IRA administrator, our company 401K plan can be self-directed, so we have the opportunity to transfer some of those funds into a self-directed IRA. However, most of the time, the only time you'll be able to move funds from an employer plan is if you severed employment or had some sort of triggering event that would allow you to roll those funds to another plan. So I do want to clarify that. A lot of self-directed IRA plans are often funded with old employer plans. So if somebody's got an employer plan, an old employer plan that they're not quite sure what to do with the funds, a lot of times they will send them into a self-directed IRA. So these are the types of plans that you can self-direct. Sometimes people want to know, well, wait, okay, I get it. I can invest in things like real estate, notes, private placements. Okay, what are some of the other benefits that might be available to me with a self-directed plan that's not available to me currently with wherever my funds are, whether, again, Schwab, Fidelity. As far as the tax advantages, there's no difference. Absolutely no difference because, again, the type of account that we're establishing with a self-directed IRA administrator is no different than what you would set up with anyone else. So across the board, the tax advantages are the same. There's no difference. As far as the investment options, this is where you start getting into the key differences. So as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the administrators have their own products and services that they're offering to their clients, and that's basically it. So you're restricted to what they offer. With a self-directed IRA, the choice is yours. However, you do have to be the one to go out and find those investments. So if you're not somebody who likes to be in control, if you don't like to be the one making the decision, a self-directed IRA may not be for you. It's not a one-size-fits-all. Some people like to have total control over everything that's going on, and in that case, a self-directed IRA is great for them. For people that want to just be told what to invest in, or they're too busy and they don't have the time to try and figure out where to put their retirement funds, then probably sticking with your banks or brokerage firms is going to be the better option for the time being. Because as you all know, doing your own deals and doing your own investments, there's a lot of work involved, especially doing the due diligence. It'd be the same with trying to vet your self-directed IRA investments. As far as administrative fees, so a lot of times people like to say that there's hidden fees within the banks and the brokerages. So up front, it seems like it's a lower cost, but then when you start factoring in all the fees behind the scenes, it can tend to add up, depending on who you're with. With a self-directed IRA administrator, regardless of who you select, usually you have the option of paying either a flat fee based on the number of assets that you're investing in, or you can pay based on the entire value of the account. Again, it's a matter of preference. It's not a huge difference, but you know upfront what your fees are going to be with a self-directed IRA. And then finally, true diversification. Kind of goes back to the investment options point, that you have the opportunity to expand and invest in things that you're more familiar with. And it's not to say that it's an all or nothing situation. Most of our clients will have their accounts at the more traditional, so to speak, IRA administrators and transfer a portion of those funds to a self-directed IRA and then self-direct some of those funds. We very rarely see someone transfer everything from their existing IRA into a self-directed IRA. It's more because they're trying to diversify and allocate the funds across several different vehicles. So as far as the assets that you can invest in with a self-directed IRA, tonight we're going to focus on real estate. All types of real estate qualify. Single family, commercial, land, you name it, real estate qualifies. Now there's other investments that you can choose to put your funds into, such as doing mortgages, notes, LLCs, private placements, futures, Forex. Probably the better way to say it is there are two things you can't invest in with a self-directed IRA: life insurance and collectibles. Anything outside of that, fair game. We had a client invest in a llama, which was interesting because it's like, well, what do you do when it dies? Because like, you didn't sell it, but your investment is gone. So that was interesting. We had somebody invest in a racehorse. We had somebody invest in season tickets for, I believe it was an NFL team, and then sold them for a very nice profit. Didn't fall under life insurance or collectibles, so they were able to put all that profit back into their self-directed IRA. The IRA bought the tickets, sold them, everything went back into the IRA account. That was pretty cool. But the more common investments are listed here. Now, as far as the benefits of doing real estate in an IRA, you all probably know better than I do how important it is to be able to get deals done quickly and to have access to cash. You know, any delays to funding a transaction could mean a deal dies. So the nice thing with doing or having access to a real estate IRA is the fact that the funds are there. It's another source of funds. So if you're short, we're going to talk in a little bit about how you could possibly partner up with your IRA. If you don't personally have funds that are sufficient to make an investment, you can partner up with an IRA, whether it be yours or someone else's. So it's really an opportunity to not only diversify your retirement account, but also grow it tax-free, and also have access to funds, or perhaps somebody you know would have access to funds that they didn't realize they had access to. So a lot of times people will say, well, I don't have that kind of money, but yet they're sitting on a couple $100,000 in an IRA. So really it's another investor that you could potentially turn to if you're looking to get some deals done and maybe going the more traditional route isn't working. So one thing that I want to stress is, like I said, an IRA, when you're dealing with a self-directed IRA, the IRA is the buyer/investor in the transaction. So when you look at the titling of the documents, for example, for the property, it's not going to have, if it's Adrian's IRA that's doing the purchase, it's going to have Adrian's IRA as the buyer, as the grantee on the deed, not Adrian himself. Okay, so the key thing to remember is everything's got to be arm's length, and you have to remember that your IRA is a separate entity from you personally. And so from titling to the assets to the properties themselves, you have to make sure that it truly is investment property only, which means no personal use. For you all, I don't think that this would be difficult because you're already used to buying and selling investment properties, right? You're not typically, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're not typically buying properties that you're going to use yourselves. You're trying to get deals done. You're trying to fix them, do whatever you need to do, make your profit, move on to the next deal. So for you all, it would be an easy concept to say, yeah, that makes perfect sense. For some people, it's not, because the real estate is a tangible thing, especially when they're buying a beautiful condo on the beach in Southwest Florida. It's very tempting to want to use that condo here and there, to check on it, make sure it's okay, but you can't do that. It's got to be strictly investment property when you're talking about IRA funds buying those properties. Now, the good thing is, yes.
Sorry. So let's say, for example, you're looking to purchase a property using your self-directed IRA fund. You then roll or buy out or essentially looking to retitle into an LLC. Is that a possibility?
You could, and that's a great segue for a few slides ahead. We're going to talk about that, but yes. So the question was, if you buy something, a property in your IRA, could you eventually retitle it into an LLC? You could, but there are some restrictions. I'll just give you a little sneak peek what we'll talk about. It's got to be an LLC that is set up and owned by your IRA. So you would not be able to take this property owned by your IRA and then deed it into an LLC that you own personally. So, and that kind of ties into what we'll talk about next, which is prohibited parties and prohibited transactions. So the good thing about a self-directed IRA property is that all of the income and all of the expenses must flow through the IRA. So again, you are completely separate and independent from your IRA account. So if the IRA owns the property, the IRA has got to collect the income and pay the expenses. So you personally would not be able to pay the HOA dues, or if some work needed to be done on the property. If the IRA owns it, the IRA is responsible for paying it. I have to say that's probably the one place where clients get tripped up, is because they're so used to handling things themselves and paying for things themselves that they have to stop themselves and remember, I don't own the property, my IRA does. And so anything that is associated with the IRA property has to be completely hands-off by you. So that brings us to no prohibited transactions or parties. Now, all transactions have to exclusively benefit the IRA. So what that means is, Adrian could not buy a property and then eventually, how old are your kids? Young. Okay, so they're not in college yet. So anyway, he could not eventually buy a property in his IRA for his kids to stay in when they go off to college. Because that's a really nice parent that would want to do that. They'll buy a condo in the city wherever their kids are going to be going to college and think, okay, I'm going to get that. Kids can stay there. They can have some other kids stay there too. The rent's going to go into the IRA. There's some benefit that is coming from this transaction because his son or daughter or his children are going to be benefiting from this. So you have to make sure that you're not doing any transactions, I hate to say with your IRA, because there's a way that you can that we'll talk about. You can't sell to or lease to your IRA. So if you personally have a property, you can't sell it to your IRA and think, okay, well, this is great because I've got this property I've been sitting on. I'd rather put it into my IRA and then let it appreciate in value so that when I sell it, all the profits, everything's going to go into the IRA and it's all sheltered. It doesn't work that way. Question?
So I can't buy a 3-unit building and then rent one apartment from my IRA?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Unfortunately, those are the rules. But as long as you know the rules, then you know what you can do, right? So you can't stay, you can't vacation, you can't personally use an IRA property, even if there is split ownership. So sometimes what clients will do is, if it's a $100,000 property, 50% will be owned by their IRA, 50% will be owned by them personally, right? So the natural inclination is, Well, since I own it 50% personally, I should be able to use it personally 50% of the time. Not for nothing. I'm in agreement, but that's not allowed. If the IRA has even a 0.001% ownership interest in the property, there is zero personal use. So that's something to keep in mind. You can't personally extend credit to your IRA. So sometimes people will say, well, I want my IRA to own this property 100%, but it only has 50% of the balance needed to make this purchase happen. I'm going to go ahead and fund the remaining 50%, but I want the IRA to own the entire thing. That's extending credit to your IRA. You cannot do that. And you can't really receive any sort of personal benefit from it. So I guess that's what it all comes down to. No personal benefit from the IRA-owned asset. You cannot lease from the IRA, so you can't rent from it. The IRA can't rent from you, or anyone that's considered a disqualified party, which is either the IRA owner, himself or herself and their spouse, lineal ascendants and descendants and their spouses, investment advisors and managers, corporations, trusts, partnerships, anything in which the IRA owner has a 50% interest or more in, and anyone providing services to the plan. So the trustee or the custodian would be a disqualified party. Yes?
So can I buy a property with my IRA, I can flip it, and when I sell it, I can make my profit and then pay my IRA as percent?
Yeah, so, okay, that's a great question. So what would happen is, in that instance, let's say it's 50-50. You bought a property with your IRA 50-50. When you go to sell that property, your personal interest, you'll get your 50% of the profit. The IRA gets its 50% of the profit, but it's got to be pro rata. So you don't get to decide like how much goes to the IRA and how much you keep. You're going to figure out what the percentage ownership is going to be when you go to buy that property, and it's got to stay that way.
Last time Quest came out here, I thought I understood I couldn't do anything for me. I could fund somebody else's split and only make what we agreed to, but I couldn't do my personal house that I was going to do myself with it. That's how I understood it last time. I may have done it.
You're talking about doing the work yourself?
No, still hire it out, but I may have understood it wrong. That's the main reason why I didn't switch it over when I had the chance to switch over my annuity from work to an IRA.
Oh. So to clarify, you can partner up, you can do a flip property. As Adrian was asking, you can't do the work yourself. You have to make sure you hire that out to a non-disqualified party, but there's no reason why you wouldn't be able to do that.
How would you pay for all the work?
That's a great question. So did everyone hear that? How would you pay for all the work? Right here. So you have to make sure that the IRA has enough money in the account to fund its share of the expenses. So to go back to just keeping it simple, if it's a 50-50 split and there's work that's being done, typically what would happen is you'd pay out of pocket your 50% personal interest in it. The IRA would pay its 50% interest in the work. So that can get a little hairy sometimes if somebody doesn't plan ahead and factor that in when they make the purchase. So that's a really good point, that when you're thinking about partnering up with an IRA, whether it's your IRA or whether your IRA is partnering up with someone else, if you guys determine the percentages up front, you have to plan and make sure you have enough of a buffer in the account to cover any expected, especially when there's going to be work, because everybody's got to pay their share of the expenses. Unfortunately, if it were you and your IRA partnering up together, you cannot change those percentages once they've been established. So you got to make sure you know that up front. So that's a great question.
So you have to tell them exactly how much the total project's going to cost, and that determines your percentage ownership?
It should, yeah, right. So in that instance, if we're not just buying the property, we're buying the property to put work into it, you're going to kind of have to work backwards and figure out how much is the total project going to cost, how much is the IRA going to have, at the end of the day, and then figure out, okay, well, what's the purchase price of the property, and then how much is the work, figure out the percentages.
So can it pay for like your Menards bill, or does it have to go through a contractor?
It would probably have to go to a contractor because it wouldn't be able to pay the whole bill. It would have to pay half that bill. So whatever bills you get are gonna have to be split 50-50 or 60-40, however. And that's a pain in the tuchus sometimes, right? So that's something to think about, because if you're just buying a property together and you're gonna be collecting rent, that's another story. But if you're trying to do work, there's an option that might be better suited for that situation, or you can have someone who's not disqualified to your IRA act as the project manager and set up an account to handle everything, so that they're paying the bills and having everything, at least while the work's being done. So there's workarounds. If you have a friend that would be willing to do that, then instead of...
Siblings are allowed, right?
What's that?
Siblings.
Siblings are allowed. They are not disqualified parties. Yeah. It's only lineal ascendants and descendants and their spouses that are disqualified parties. So anyone, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, cousins, for some reason, they're not considered disqualified parties. I, for one, would not give my brother any money, whether it's IRA funds or not, but that's okay. If you trust your siblings, go for it, because your IRA can loan to them or do transactions with them. Up and down the family tree, no. But aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters, yes.
So in the event, like, let's say you have $100,000 in your IRA and it's 50 purchase price, and you figure it's going to be 50 on rehab, but it ends up being 60 or 70 on rehab. Now your IRA's tapped out. What's your option there? Is there like, can you pay penalties or something, or how would you be able to complete the project at that point?
Well, okay. So then hopefully, so the IRA is buying the whole thing, and it's anticipating 50,000 worth of work, but it ends up being 10,000 more. So at that point, I would be praying that you're able to make a contribution to the account. You haven't maxed out your contributions for that year. Otherwise, your IRA could maybe borrow some money from maybe another IRA or a non-disqualified party to help finish the work, but it's not, again, it's just finding somebody who's not disqualified that can loan the funds to the IRA. Hopefully you don't find yourself in that bit of a pickle, or hopefully you have funds in another IRA account that you could transfer some funds over. So that's the beauty of, or benefit of, not having everything all in one account, is you would then have the opportunity to do a transfer over to have those additional funds available to you, which is typically what clients will do. If they find that they underestimated how much they actually needed, thankfully they have money somewhere else in another IRA to transfer from. And then as the income builds up and the account builds up in value, a lot of times they'll take a chunk of it and transfer it back to the Schwab or the Fidelity and let it do its thing over there until they're ready to do another deal. Okay, so for any of you having trouble sleeping at night, Internal Revenue Code 4975 discusses prohibited parties and transactions. I would highly recommend that if you need some assistance sleeping. For those insomniacs, I would say publication 590, because that goes over each retirement account that's available to you and all of the rules and restrictions. If you don't have trouble sleeping, you just want an interesting read, knock yourself out. Now, there are 3 ways that someone can go about purchasing real estate. Okay, they can do the straight cash purchase, where the IRA owns 100% of the property, which is typically what we would see. They can partner with someone else. So again, we kind of touched on this earlier. They can either partner with their IRA can partner with themselves. They can bring other people into the mix. They can partner up with individuals that are considered disqualified parties. Okay, so even though my husband would be considered a disqualified party that my IRA cannot do a transaction like sell to or buy from, my IRA can partner up on a brand spanking new deal with my husband without any issues. But it has to be a brand new deal, and we have to figure that out before we go under contract, before we do anything. And then once we decide what we're doing, we got to be committed to it because we can't make changes after the fact. And lastly, the Checkbook Control LLC. So this is for those people that absolutely want nothing to do with me or Midland. They just want the administration, but they want to do everything on their own. They don't want me butting into their business, bothering them, telling them I need this form, I need you to do this or that. So we're going to talk about each one briefly. The first one is the cash deal from a single IRA. So it's, again, the IRA is going out, buying the property on its own. It's a nice, clean, simple transaction. So the first thing that the client would do is open a self-directed IRA. They're going to transfer funds from another retirement account. That's typically how it's done. Now, if you're starting from scratch, you don't have an existing IRA, and perhaps you're starting off with just whatever the maximum contribution limit is, depending on the account that you're setting up, okay? So for Roths and traditional, I think it's about $6,000 is the max that you can put into your retirement account per year. When you start off small like that, partnering up with someone else might be the best way to get started so that you can build up the value of the account to get to a point where you can start doing the deal, or your IRA can start doing the deals on its own without anyone else in the mix. In this particular instance, the client's transferring $50,000 from another IRA, makes an offer to purchase a $40,000 property. Take note, he transferred 50 over, but he's buying a $40,000 property because he's going to keep 10 grand in there as a nice buffer. I would highly recommend doing that if you're setting up a self-directed IRA. I don't know that you need the $10,000 buffer, but I would move enough over to cover any unexpected expenses that may come up, because they always do. And you don't want to be caught in that situation like the question earlier where it's like, I didn't have enough money in the account. I thought I had enough that I needed, but turns out I needed a little bit more. It's easier to just transfer a little bit more than you think. You can always move it back once the deal is done and you start generating income. But at least it won't slow things down because you don't have enough in the account. So, submit the offer to purchase the property. Where we come in is basically we're order takers. So you find the property, and then you call up and say, Teresa, I found a property I want to buy in my IRA. Cool, I'm going to give you the verbiage that you need to put on the contract, because remember, it's not you buying the property, it's your IRA buying the property. So we want to make sure that the buyer is referenced correctly. Basically, I'm going to take my direction from you. You're going to tell me what property you want to buy. I'll give you all the information. I'll work with whoever we need to work with. If you have a realtor involved in the mix, then we'll give the realtor the exact verbiage on how to put the buyer on the contract. Technically, though, we would be signing off on everything as the IRA administrator. Because the IRA is purchasing the property, the IRA is the one that needs to be signing all contracts, closing documents, anything related to the transaction will be signed by the IRA administrator, not the IRA owner. However, we would need to have approval on everything before we sign any documents. So for a contract, for example, let's say somebody sends me a contract and said, I need you to sign it off on this on behalf of Adrian's IRA. No problem. I just need Adrian to initial a copy for me via DocuSign, and then I'll be happy to sign that for you and send it back. So nothing happens without your approval and authorization. And that's with any IRA administrator. That's not just us, it's just anyone. It's to protect you, and it's also to protect us, because we don't want to sign something that we're not sure that you've actually seen and approved. So you have to factor that as well when doing transactions with your IRA, that you're still involved. You're just not necessarily, we're kind of an intermediary, so to speak. So you're going to be more involved with us. You're going to approve everything. We're going to send you everything that we get before we sign it, and you review and approve it. So once we go to closing, you've approved everything. We're going to send the funds to whoever's handling the closing. And then that's it. The deed's going to show, for example, Midland Trust Company as custodian for IRA number 12345. So if somebody were to look up on the property records, that particular property address, they're going to see the owner is Midland Trust Company for the benefit of your IRA. At the same time, hopefully you find, if it's a rental property, you're going to find a renter. And let's say you find one for $900 a month, you're going to net cash flow $8,000 a year. As I mentioned earlier, all of the income goes back directly into the IRA account. Nothing goes into your pocket. Everything goes back to the IRA first. If you want to take a cash distribution out of the account, you can, but that's reportable. Depending on the type of account that you have, it will be taxable. So just keep that in mind. Everything goes back into the IRA account. Or if you have a property manager, you can have a property manager collect the rent and pay the expenses if you don't want to necessarily have to go through requesting payments for bills that come up. Everything does need to be paid for on behalf of the IRA property out of the IRA funds. So just keep that in mind. Yes?
So the renter could either pay the IRA rent or the property manager?
Correct. Yep. So the way we have it set up, we can currently, the most popular way that our clients have us do it is we pull the rents every month from the tenant's account by electronic transfer, because a lot of our clients get tired of checks bouncing or tenants. Not that you guys ever experienced this, but sometimes tenants will say it was in the mail. I swear to God, I sent it, but we never get it. So now we start pulling the funds from the account. If there's a property manager, yes, they would just cut the check to the property manager instead. Where a property manager would be beneficial is if you have the split ownership. Because, again, it's hard enough to get a tenant to pay one rental payment to somebody, but imagine being like, so I'm going to need you to cut 2 checks. One to Midland Trust Company and then one to me personally, because we've got 2 owners on title to the property. Property manager is great for that situation. If it's owned entirely by the IRA, you can have us pull those funds right out of their account.
How does the money go back to you guys?
From the property manager? So they can maintain, they don't necessarily have to send that money to us. They're just going to keep their own records. So as they collect the rent, they'll pay any expenses associated with the property. If the account gets to a certain point where you think like, God, you guys have you have way more than you need, then you can have them send us the net that's left or a certain dollar amount. We just want to make sure it never goes in your pocket. I don't want you going spending that money, because I'm going to get in trouble and you're going to get taxed on it. But you can have the property manager keep the funds, or you can have the property manager send us the money after all of the expenses have been paid. So some clients will set it up to where the property manager sends us a payment quarterly. And they'll send an accompanying statement just for our records to show, hey, this is what we collected every month, these were all the expenses, here's what's left to be deposited as income to the IRA account. Welcome. Yes?
Do you have transactional expenses? Like if you're managing and mailing out Disco and lawn care and taxes and plumbing and all that, is there a transactional fee for each check?
There is. So we have a client portal available. So if you request that online through the portal, it's $5 for every time we cut a check. If you email or fax in a check request, it would be $10 for each payment made. So the portal is the better thing. Now, to offset some of...
What about like LLC annual document fees? And also maintenance and transfer fees?
Yes, all of the above. All of the above. If you conduct a transaction, if it's a real estate transaction, it's $145 each time you do a real estate transaction.
Is that including note preparation?
Note preparation?
Well, note.
We do not prepare any of those documents.
Okay.
So if you're asking, I want to make sure I understand. If you're asking, do we prepare any notes or documents? Actually, we don't prepare any closing documents.
Is there any document fee for any note transactions or mortgage?
The only thing that we'll do is charge a transaction fee for processing it. We don't prepare documents. So for a note transaction, $95. say 3 years later, Bob in our example here wants to sell the property that he bought for $40,000. He's going to sell it for $65,000. He's going to work again with his Midland rep to get all the proper documentation in place, proper authorizations to actually sell. So we'll sign off on all the closing documents. And then we'll get the net proceeds of $25,000 back into the IRA account. So when you consider the $24,000 worth of income, because remember he was renting it out at $8,000 per year for 3 years, $15,000 worth of gain, $39,000 tax deferred gain in his IRA, goes back into his IRA. Because it's all sheltered by the IRA, there are no capital gains taxes assessed. So no need for a 1031 exchange because this is all done within the IRA, not outside. So method number 2, yeah, sure. I can send this if, I can email a copy of this presentation to whoever wants it too, if anybody wants it. You can take your pick. Did you want, I'll take, okay. Yeah, we can email you this too, so no worries. Absolutely. So method number 2 is purchasing real estate in an IRA-owned LLC. Again, this is for people that want a little more control. Maybe they're doing a lot of transactions. People that are going to buy multiple properties, they're going to buy, flip, buy, flip. As the gentleman in the back asked about the fees, the transaction fees, those can add up very quickly. So this might be an alternative to consider if you think you're going to be one of those people. If you're just going to buy something that you're going to hold and perhaps rent out, the IRA LLC is really not going to benefit you. In fact, it's probably not going to be very cost effective. But if you are one of those people that does transactions and you think you're going to buy, sell, or maybe have multiple assets at once, then this might be something to consider. So if you want total control over the IRA account and the investment, then you set up the Check and Control LLC. All it is a single member LLC that is owned entirely by your IRA. Your IRA is the sole member. You can designate yourself as the manager, which means you could go and set up a bank account under the LLC's name. The LLC is now the one doing the buying and selling of the assets. So we're not involved. There's no, Midland, I need you to sign this contract. Midland, I need you to sign these closing documents. Midland, I need you to fund these transactions. It's truly, once you set up the LLC and get the LLC's checking account established, you direct us on how much money to send to the LLC's checking account, and then you're off and running. That's a lot of power and control, but with that comes a lot of responsibility. So the flip side of this is you could also, instead of just having a single member LLC, you could bring other people into it and form a multi-member LLC. Same deal though is that the LLC is the one now doing the investing. So we're removed from it once the LLC is funded with the IRA funds, whether the IRA is funding 100% or 40% of the interest in the LLC, whatever it is, once the IRA funds the LLC's checking account or whoever it's sending the funds to, we're now out of it. So if you're doing a lot of deals or you're bringing other people into your deals, the LLC might be a cleaner way to go instead of having 3 or 4 people on title to a property. You can set up the LLC, have the IRA be a member in that LLC. Some of the advantages is obviously more control, ease of getting transactions done, because again, you've got one buyer, which is this entity, as opposed to 3, 4, 5 different parties on title. Can act pretty quickly, because again, you're not having to go through the IRA administrator. The LLC is already established and funded. So whoever is handling the affairs of the LLC is the one that's going to go out and make the offers, do the closings, and fund the transactions. If you've got multiple assets, like I mentioned earlier, it can be more cost effective because our standard fee, if you're on a per asset per year basis, to give you an example, our fee is $295 per asset per year. you've got 3, 4 properties, that's $295 times 3 or 4, whether you hold it for a month or a year. That's a lot. That can add up. If you have the LLC, technically the only asset on our books is this LLC. This LLC could in turn have 5 or 6 assets that it's holding, but we're only administering the one LLC asset. So it might make sense to consider that. Not for everybody, but it could be more cost effective for those of you that are doing a lot. And it would cut down on those miscellaneous transaction fees, check fees even. Because you're not having to request those from us. You're handling it on your own. So let's take a look at how that happens. So Bob, again, is going to open a Midland self-directed IRA. He transfers $75,000 from an existing IRA, and he wants to purchase real estate using an IRA-owned LLC. So he sets up this checkbook control LLC, instructs us to send $60,000 to the LLC's checking account. At that point, we fund the account, and then he's on his own to buy whatever property he wants to buy in that LLC name. We're not reviewing documents. Same rules apply though, by the way. So when it comes to prohibited parties and disqualified, or prohibited transactions and disqualified parties, it still applies to this LLC. So you may have kicked me out of the mix, but you have not escaped the fact that you still have to adhere to the rules as they pertain to prohibited transactions and disqualified parties. So that LLC is expected to conduct itself accordingly. Now, on an annual basis, whoever is the LLC manager, typically if it's the checkbook control LLC, it's going to be the IRA owner. They're going to have to provide us with an annual valuation of the LLC, including the assets, the bank accounts, whatever that value is, because we don't have anything. All we have is that we funded this LLC at X amount of dollars, but we're going to need for the LLC manager to give us that update every year so we know what the true value or accurate value is of that asset. Single member LLCs are not required to file a tax return because they're just regarded entities, but if it's a multi-member LLC, they will have to file a tax return. We always like to tell clients, like, this sounds really cool, and it is beneficial in the right situation, but remember that with great power comes great responsibility. If we're removed from the mix, we cannot catch any potential red flags or caution you if you're about to take a misstep. So you have to feel very comfortable and confident that you know what you're doing, you know what you're allowed to do, and what you're not allowed to do. If you know the rules, then you know you can be pretty successful with it and actually get deals done very, very quickly with this scenario. But just remember, bless you, but just remember that you've got more responsibility on your shoulders because we're not as involved. Yes?
So that annual reporting thing, does that have to do with required minimum distributions? Is that why you're required to make that annual?
The valuation?
Yeah.
So for the required minimum distributions, they would have to do something, yes, that is. Part of our responsibility as the administrator is we have to submit that and make sure we have, when we're audited, that we have accurate records and show that we're staying on top of the valuations. But yes, to speak to your question, it does also have to do with the required minimum distribution.
But isn't that has to be done by an independent source?
An appraiser, is that?
Well, for your minimum distribution. You figure out minimum distributions for this person's account.
We actually will offer assistance in figuring out the minimum distribution. But, I mean, personally, I would say if you have a tax person that can help you with that too, great. But if they do, we do offer that assistance for them.
Is there a fee for that?
No. That's the one thing that we don't have a fee for. How about that?
Is there a time limit for how long the money can stay in that LLC?
No. Are you saying like how do you have to bring it back at any point in time? No. So the question was, is there a time limit for how long the funds can stay in the checkbook LLC before it has to come back? No. No, as long as you're providing us with evaluations every year and you're staying on top, you can keep it in the LLC as long as you want to.
I got one more.
Yes.
I'm annoying. I think I saw on your slide, like, towards the beginning of the presentation about an IRA can't assign contracts.
Yes. So, okay. Was that your question?
I thought I saw that, and then I was wondering, like, could you do it the other way? Would you be able to assign a contract to your IRA? Like, say I put something under contract and then funds became available in my IRA, can I then assign the contract to my IRA and close the IRA?
No.
Okay.
So way back, we used to be able to do that. It wasn't so clear that it wasn't great to do. So we said, yeah, go ahead. As long as it's done before you actually close, then just get the new contract, get it assigned, and shoot. We used to have clients who used to put the deposit down on the purchase, and we would just overfund with IRA funds so that it funded the entire purchase, and the client got their initial deposit back. But in recent years, it was determined like that's a no-go. So you've got to make sure you start out with the IRA as the buyer. The IRA's got to fund the deposit up front. No reimbursing you. So yes, you did read that correctly earlier. There is no assigning the contract. So if you find something today, you're like, oh my God, that would be awesome in my IRA, but I don't even have that set up yet. Let me go ahead and get that property under my name. I'll assign it later. It's not going to work. You'll have to get a brand new contract. I feel like Debbie Downer. I'm like, no, you can't do this, and you can't do that. But it's good to know what you can't do, right? And then you figure out what you can do in the mix. So an IRA purchase versus a single member LLC. Again, this is just an illustration to show you when it's directly done in the IRA, we're involved every step of the way. When you've got the LLC, we're not involved at all after the funding of the LLC's checking account, which some people may like. Okay, if you're short on funds, you can purchase real estate by partnering with other people. Or if you just don't want to deplete your IRA account, you can bring other people into a deal and you can have it set up as a tenancy in common. You can do a joint venture. As we mentioned earlier, you could have a multi-member LLC or a partnership. You can bring disqualified parties into your deals as long as it's a brand spanking new deal. What you can't do is buy something 100% in your IRA and then once it's purchased decide, okay, I'm going to bring my husband into this or my wife and let her buy 50% interest from the IRA. It's not going to work. So you have to figure out who you want involved, who you want invested in this property or whatever it is you're doing up front. Make the decision and then commit to it. If you've got disqualified parties involved, as I mentioned earlier, you cannot make changes after the fact. So the only way to get out of it is to sell the asset or cash out. Everybody gets their share of the profits and everybody goes their separate ways. So here's an example where Bob's found a great investment opportunity. The total price is $100,000. He's got $50,000. And he needs an additional $50,000 into the deal. His buddy Howard's got $50,000 in his IRA. Bob and Howard partner up. The title to the property would show Bob as a 50% owner and Howard's IRA as a 50% owner. Moving forward, Bob and Howard split the income and the expenses 50-50. Your IRA can partner with other parties as well. So let's say Bob's IRA is the one that's got the 50 grand and he's trying to do this $100,000 deal. He could bring Emily's IRA in. Bob and Emily personally can put some money in. His neighbor John, if he really likes him, he can bring him in on a deal. We all be going on a deal together. But we have to remember that moving forward, we all have to split the income and expenses accordingly. So as far as getting things, the timeline, when you're setting up an IRA account, this is just an illustration. You want to set up first of all, set up the account, and then you want to fund it. Okay, that can take anywhere from 1 to 2 weeks depending on who the funds are coming from. Opening up the account, usually done within 24 hours. 1 to 2 weeks to get the account funded if you've got funds coming over from another IRA administrator. Making the investment. So while you're waiting for funds to come over, you should be, if you don't already have it, looking for the investment that you want your funds to invest in, your IRA funds to invest in. Usually clients, when they come to us, they already know what they want to invest in. It's just a matter of getting through this process so that they can make their purchase or whatever it is they're going to buy. Once you make the investment, then you just leave it to us. If it's titled in the IRA directly, we're just going to be there and we're going to be waiting for you to tell us, you know, I have a tenant, or I'm ready to sell this property, I've found a buyer for it, or I'm ready to do another deal. Everything just kind of goes at your pace, and we take our direction from you. So the busier you are, the busier you keep us, which is good, because then we earn our fees that we're charging you for each asset that we're administering. But there's really no timeline. So if you buy a property, you don't have to hold it for any period of time before you sell it. Unlike for those of you that are familiar with exchanges, you probably remember you have to hold it for a certain period of time before you can sell it and do another exchange. With IRA properties, that's not the case. You could buy today and sell it next week. And repeat the process. Yes?
Maybe I missed this earlier, but if you have a workplace 401 and you have whatever restrictions, like you said, 99% of them, you can't roll it in without leaving the company. Can you establish a self-directed IRA separate from your workplace program?
You could set up a traditional or a Roth IRA, is typically what clients would do, so that if and when they do sever employment, if they're planning on doing that, then they have an account to roll the funds into.
So is there any benefit to establishing, say, a self-directed IRA while maintaining a workplace plan, funding that on your own, and then using that for deals?
Sure. Yeah. I mean that, and I think the benefit to that is you can actually start doing deals, especially with a Roth, because in those situations, my boss always likes to say, you're taxing the seed instead of the crop. You're funding it with money you've already paid taxes on, so it will grow truly tax-free. And there's a 5-year clock on that, so you have to have that account established for 5 years. Granted, you're nowhere near 59.5, but in order to take those distributions out tax-free, it's 5 years, 59.5. Any contributions that you make, though, you can take out at any point in time while the account's established. So it's a great thing to get that established now, so that if, whether you plan to or didn't plan to, sever employment, then you might have an opportunity to transfer those funds to that account. Did that answer your question? Yes. So yes, to answer your question, yes, there's definitely a perk to setting up a separate one and funding it yourself. Keeping in mind there are contribution limits, but you start small, build it up. Now, if you're just looking to build it up and you know you're starting from scratch, I don't know that a self-directed IRA would be the best place to start. Set it up somewhere else, build it up, and then transfer funds over so you can start doing deals. Unless you know right out the gate you want to do some smaller deals or partner up with people. But just kind of keep that in mind, because you're not going to be earning any interest on the money that sits with Midland. The expectation is that when you transfer funds over, you're ready to go, or you're going to be soon ready to go with your investments. So this is not, as much as I would love to hold everybody's money, it's not going to do you any good, because it's not going to earn interest while it's just sitting there.
Thank you.
Yes.
Is there a penalty or something if you, I know it's better to return the investment back in before you use it again, but is there a penalty if you don't, if you just roll it back over into another, say you funded a property, and then once you sold that, then you just rolled it back over into another one? Is there a fine for doing that, or?
So, okay, if I understand correctly, you just want to know, is there any penalty to you taking whatever funds you got from the sale, putting it into another investment?
Right away without putting
No,
it in.
but they would need to come back to the IRA first. They got to make a pit stop back at the IRA first before you turn around and have us fund the next purchase. Now, could you line it up to where, let's say you're closing on the sale tomorrow, and you want you've already got the new purchase lined up to close a week from tomorrow? Sure, you could do that. They don't have to sit and marinate, so to speak, with us, but they do need to come back first to us, so that we can record that the sale took place of the first property, and then we also will record the purchase of the new property. Is that what you were asking? Okay.
Thanks.
Anybody else? That's me. Yes.
Just say, you know you have enough funds in your account. Just say instead of investing in a property, you want to act as a private lender.
Sure.
And loan the money.
Yes.
I mean, the IRA still is in charge, in control of that.
Yes, so if you wanted to go that route, you absolutely could. So in that situation, the IRA would be the lender in the transaction. That would, Midland Trust Company, for the benefit of your IRA, would be listed as the lender on the closing statement. So now the borrower is going to make the loan payments to us to deposit into your account, deposited as principal and interest, whatever the breakdown is. But in that case, yeah, I mean, instead of a property being an asset on your IRA statement, it's going to show that you actually have a note.
You actually owe the mortgage, so you can actually redo it, you know, for each property that you lend on. It's just gonna cost you $295 transaction for each time, unless you're in an LLC. Correct?
Correct. $295 asset fee.
Right, so you don't, if he had one and he put it in LLC,
Yes.
he can re-loan that money out.
Absolutely,
3 or 4
yes.
times, and it doesn't cost you $295.
That's right. It would only charge you $295 because we'd only have the LLC on our books. So if you wanted to loan, if you wanted to do 5 loans, you could. All you're ever going to get charged from us is the $295 asset fee. Yes.
Are you gonna discuss a little bit about, lending through the mortgage with an IRA and then like the tax?
I did not have that as my presentation, part of my presentation for tonight. That could be a whole class on its own.
But like talking about like you can do a non-recourse loan.
Sure. If the IRA needs to borrow funds, now it can. So let's say an IRA wants to buy a property 100%, but it doesn't have enough money. It can borrow funds, but as mentioned, it's got to be a non-recourse loan to the IRA. It cannot be personally guaranteed by the IRA owner. Typically, it will require usually anywhere from 30 to 50% down as a down payment from the IRA. And the property itself would have to be able to show that it's going to generate enough income to make the monthly mortgage payments. So in other words, you wouldn't be able to borrow, your IRA would not be able to borrow on the purchase of a piece of vacant land because it's not going to generate any income and probably won't be able to make its mortgage payments. Now there is tax associated with income generated by a financed property. So even though it's owned by an IRA, because it financed a portion of that purchase, any income that's generated off of that particular asset is going to be subject to unrelated debt financed income tax. I am not an expert on UDFI or unrelated business income tax. If somebody wants more information on that, I can certainly get that to you. But again, that can be a class all on its own. Unfortunately, a very small percentage of people get financed properties. Just as an FYI, it can be done. There are some lenders that can do it, but because of the tax that's associated with it, even though it's an IRA property, it's somewhat of a deterrent. Exactly.
So, let's say.
There's a lot of side chatter. If you want to go out in the hall and have your conversations, that's fine, but it's getting in the way of the conversations.
Say you have a couple of properties that you purchase and sell.
Okay.
And the number goes up and up.
Uh-huh.
When can you pull the money out of a self-directed IRA and put it in your personal account?
Well, so you want to go shopping. You want to spend that money. This is supposed to benefit your retirement, not now. I'm just kidding. You can take money out at any point in time. It's gonna, just like if you have an IRA at anywhere else, Schwab, Fidelity, you took money out today, you're gonna be subject to taxes and penalties because you are not of the age of 59 and a half to start taking out those, distributions.
So when you're 59 and a half, let's say you started at 59 and a half.
Okay,
Then you pull it out.
you're still gonna pay taxes on it, you just won't get the penalty.
Yeah, you see, 5 years.
For the Roth, it's gotta be seasoned for 5 years. Yes, thank you. So the moral of the story is keep it in the account. Don't be spend other money. Don't take that money out.
Right.
Yes.
Can you pay, or so I heard you say you can't pay yourself. Can you pay your construction LLC that's in your name? Or like if you have an established construction company?
So if you own 50% or more interest in that construction company, you cannot pay that company.
You have a question, Casey? She answered already. Thank you.
Yes. Sure. Hate when that happens.
Oh, personally benefiting. So personally benefiting, if you do like 50% in your IRA and 50% of your own funds, property, buy it and you sell, let's say you make $20,000 profit, 10 goes back into the IRA, 10 goes to you. How is that not personally benefiting? I mean, I don't understand like that. You know what I mean? Like you can't lend, but yet you are personally benefiting from your IRA by.
Well, I think because you're making this decision up front. So
Because
you're
you already designated that money.
right.
So you can only be taxed on the 50% portion.
And you
Not on
could
the gain of the IRA membership.
you could technically exchange for 50% interest in that property too, if you wanted to. Just as a side note, you could do a 1031 exchange on the personal interest in the property when you sell it to defer taxes on your personal $10,000 profit. But, as you said, you're establishing this up front. You're going in as partners on a deal. So it's not like the IRA bought 100% of it, but then decided to give you $10,000 of the profit at closing or after closing. You're welcome. Anybody else? Yes.
So if you're doing like say a bird deal, you're going in kind, half and half IRA and you personally, every single step, the initial financing, the refinancing, the money pulled out, that all has to be distributed on a pro rata basis, right? And you have to be both on the title of the building, right?
Correct.
Okay. At every step, the refinance.
So, if you're thinking of getting financing on something that's a 50-50 deal with you and your IRA, if you're looking the traditional route, that's going to be, I'm going to be honest, it's going to be very difficult to do. Simply because the financing for the IRA's portion has to be non-recourse, and they're not going to be willing, the only recourse they'll have is the property. And if they can only take, they're not going to want something where they can only take 50% of a property should the IRA default on making its payments. Now, if you can figure out a way to get a private lender to do that for you with the understanding that they can only take 50% of the property should the IRA default, then more power to you. But just wanted to clarify that. Getting financing when there's an IRA involved typically only works when the IRA is the only buyer of the property. Yes?
You had mentioned earlier about, just say that your IRA buys a rental property. And you said that the IRA would withdraw the money from the tenant's account. So what happens if you go to withdraw the money and the money is not there? Is the owner responsible for the tenant paying it, or is the IRA responsible for collecting the money?
Good question. We will simply, the furthest we would take it is to let you know as the IRA owner that we tried to make this withdrawal and it didn't go through. But to go after the money and get it, that would be on you as the IRA owner to do that. Which is a fair point. So let me tell you this, let me just clarify this too. So I mentioned earlier you have access to a portal where you can monitor everything that's going on with your account. You can check and make sure that you'll get notified when funds get deposited to your account or when something's been funded. But if you just want to see a snapshot and say, look at what all the deposits were for the month and all the debits. If this is where it would be an ideal opportunity to make sure that whoever should be paying their rent is paying it, because that is one thing we do not do, is we do not monitor to make sure that the tenants are paying. If we're not withdrawing from their account, for example, if they just send in a check every month and you're fine with that, we will not monitor to say, hey, your tenant didn't make their monthly rent payment. That's going to be on you to log onto your account and just make sure you see the deposit get posted to your account. Yes.
What would you say is the percentage or the ratio of clients that buy and sell properties through their self-directed IRA versus holding it and renting the property out?
Okay, so roughly 25% of all of our clients total have real estate investments. As far as holding and renting versus selling, I would say about 60-40. 60 hold and rent, 40 buy and flip. Anybody else? Riveting, isn't it?
Crazy.
Are you guys glad you came out?
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm needy. What's that? You're smarter now? You're going to keep that money in your IRA account is what you're going to do. All right. Well, thank you guys very much. I appreciate it.
That was fun. I know when I first heard about IRAs, I was a little overwhelmed by all the complexities of what you can do, you can't do, and honestly, I put money in and then I didn't do anything for like 6 months, which is stupid because when you have money with Midland or any other IRA company, it's not invested, so it just sits there and you don't make anything. I went to a bunch of different websites at Midland and other IRA companies. They all have fantastic training, online articles, videos, seminars that they recorded. So I just watched a bunch of it and I got more familiar with what I could and couldn't do. And honestly, the biggest experience was just jumping in and doing something. So I've done some lending out of my IRA. I have rentals in my IRA. And you asked about managing and stuff. I would highly recommend if your IRA holds a rental property just to use a property manager. It's worth paying their fee. You can't do any work on the property, so if the tenant calls you and you got to go unclog the toilet, you can't do that. You have to hire someone. And then you got to submit the bill to the IRA, and the IRA pays it. So it's just a whole lot easier in that situation to use a management company. As I'm switching back over to the next slide, what are some other things you guys with IRAs have been using it for? Lending and flipping are probably the two big things. Who else? What else are you guys using your IRA for? Anyone do anything outside of private lending, rentals, or flipping?
Trading.
What was that?
Trading.
Trading? Anyone buying llamas or race cars or? The season tickets, that's a great idea.
Right.
So it's just the whole self-dealing thing's hard, so you have to find someone that's going to sell them for you and all that. So I'm actually thinking about, I'm glad you brought up the checkbook LLC, because I'm thinking about buying at the tax sale this year. Who's ready for the tax sale in a little over a month? Who is going to go to the tax sale but is not registered yet? You have like 3 days to do it. Here's the dates up there, and this is off of the county's website, which is onyxelectronics.com. I don't know what it is this year, but I found it very difficult just trying to search for dates and stuff. There's like hardly anything on the county's website. But this is a screenshot off of their website. You will see the registration deadline is February 20th. Today's the 17th, the 20th is Thursday. You need to register by Thursday. Call the auditor's number there, the 755-3155, and they will tell you exactly what you need to do to register. Someone told me this year if you were going to attend, and this is the auction where it's done in person at the county building, if you're going to attend, you have to be registered. So if you have a partner or spouse that's going to go with you, both of you have to be registered. They're not gonna let anyone in the room that is not registered. And it's $500 to register, and there's different ways that you bring it. If you have an LLC versus an individual, there's all sorts of different requirements. So call them and figure out exactly what you need to do. You can also go to kvechkofflaw.com/tax-sales. On his website, he breaks down some of the requirements as well. But that deadline, again, is coming up very, very, very fast. The sale is the 7th, 8th, and 9th of April this year. So usually it's in March. They bumped it back a little bit. To get the list, you go to the website at the top, onyxelectronics.com, and they actually were helpful this year. They broke the list into 2 lists. They have the list of all the houses that are on the sale for the first time, and then all the houses that have been on the sale for a couple of times. Now, we are selling a modified tax sale list, and let me tell you a little bit about that. Hard to see here, but this is what the Excel looks like when you get it from the Onyx Electronics. It has like the name, the parcel ID, and then some other information. Keep in mind, when you're buying at the tax sale, they sell it by the parcel. So if you've ever bought a property in Lake Station or Geary or Cedar Lake, one property address may be for 4 or 5 parcels. Cedar Lake is great where they'll have 25-foot parcels. You're buying a house and you get 4 parcels with it. So it may have an address there. You may not be buying an actual house. You could be buying the driveway, the garage, a foot of the house. You can't tell what the property is by the parcel. So on the list, between the 2 lists, the new list and the old list, there's like 16,000 parcels on that. So if you want to buy at the sale, you have to sort through every single parcel by city. You can click on the parcel, you got to go to the assessor site, see if it's a house, land, look at the GIS, and then from there, you'll do your drive-bys. So what we did is we ran it through a program, and it took all the parcels, we ran it through some of the county websites, and we already have all the land use there. So you'll see in just this subsection of 15 houses, more than half of them are vacant. It says vacant platted lots. There's nothing there. It's just dirt and trees and some bushes. So all those properties, unless you're interested in buying vacant land, you can immediately cross those off your list. You'll see other residential structures for that property. That's probably a garage, small detached, retail of less than that, some sort of commercial. You have more commercial, 1-family dwelling, 2-family dwelling. So we've already sorted through the list and given you the land use. So I went through the entire list, narrowed it down to the properties that I'm looking at in less than an hour. So you can go to Onyx Electronics, get the list for free, sort through 16,000, or if you want, email group at InvestNWI or talk to Jess in the hall. We have the pre-sorted list already ready for you. So again, that's the 7th, 8th, and 9th of April. Registration deadline is the 20th. So if you want to go register, if you don't buy anything, they're going to give you your $500 deposit back anyway. All right, who has a deal? Wholesaler with something under contract? Any agents with investor-friendly houses? Anyone with a joint venture? I had like 4 people. Go for it.
Have 3 wholesale deals going under contract. One just closed last week, 2 closing next week, and then another house in Cedar Lake that should be closing by the end of the month.
And what cities are these in?
1 in Cedar Lake, 3 in Gary.
Okay. Wayne, what do you got?
I got 3 wholesale deals, 1 in Crown Point, 1 in Maryville, 1 in Hammond.
Anyone else have anything? All right, we are going to try this again. A couple of weeks ago, probably 7 or 8 of us went to the tap room in Munster. It's at 313 Ridge Road. Whoops. That's the picture of it up there. Those look like urinals from far, but those are actually individual taps. You get a little card, you put your card on there, and then it charges you based on what you pour. Let me do something here real quick. I copied the slide from that previous one, so it's on a timer. There were 7 or 8 of us. We played the cash flow game, chit-chatted about deals we had going on, other real estate things. So we're going to do that every month. There'll be the opposite 2 weeks of this meeting. So that's going to be on March 2nd at 7 o'clock. Again, that's in Munster. Anytime, there's no set agenda. I'll bring the game. So if you want to play the game, you can do that. If you just want to come and have a drink and eat, they have really good food, you can do that. I'm going to post it on the Facebook page as well. So next month, we are going to have a panel of 3 investors that have been buying at the tax sale for a long time. I'm going to ballpark it. The 3 investors combined have probably purchased over 500 or 600 tax liens in their careers. And then we're also going to have an attorney. We're going to do a panel. We'll talk about the tax sale, the whole process, the due diligence. We're not going to talk about registration because the deadline is when? Thursday. So if you're going to buy, you already have to have done that. But there'll still be plenty of time to do due diligence. We'll talk about if you win a tax lien, what you have to do as far as the attorney process and the notification to get your deed and all that. So that is Monday the 16th. So we got plenty of pizza, plenty of cookies. Finish off the food, and we have the room for a little bit more tonight. So thanks for coming.
Yeah, so that's the thing, is like he's looking for somebody that he can talk to.